let me introduce the people that we have on the phone today. So with me, I have two of my favorite colleagues, George Totev, who has joined me on many of these. He is our CISO here at Trustero, and Paolo Marquez, who I believe is joining us for the first time on one of these webinars. Paolo is our GRC advisor and solutions engineer and I think, 15-year GRC veteran. Welcome, Paolo. Thanks for joining us today. And I'm Michael. I lead the marketing team here at Trustero. So thanks for joining us, fellas. We're here to talk about Trustero's integration and partnership with Archer, which has been a long time coming. We're really excited about this. We have a great relationship with Archer. And I think what we're doing with the Archer team, what we're doing with Archer is super exciting and adding a lot of value for Archer customers. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to go over really quickly what Trustero AI is. In a nutshell, I'm going to try to go quickly, and then I'm going to hand it off to the experts so they can show you what Trustero AI does and how it can benefit Archer customers. So George, feel free to interject here and kind of add the CISO perspective as I'm going here and giving the marketing guy perspective. So Trustero AI, we are an AI for GRC product. We're AI for GRC, and we do a lot of different things for GRC practitioners, but the things that we do specifically are up there on the board. We use AI to do some of the toughest, most cumbersome and time-consuming things that GRC professionals do. And we were the first companies, if not the first company, to use generative AI natively in a GRC platform. So we allow companies to do self-assessments through our control assurance platform. We can solution compliance gaps. We can do third-party risk management. We can answer questionnaires, and we can give general GRC intelligence through our Trustero Intelligence product, which Paolo is going to show you in depth today. The way this works in a very high-level way is we ingest data from your entire security and GRC environment, including your GRC platforms. And you can see Archer up there as one of our premier places we like to get data from. As well as your receptors, like using GitHub and Google Cloud and anywhere else, your document management, and then also your uploads, CSVs, documents, screenshots, and anywhere else. And once we have that entire universe of data, Trustero was able to map and graph that data. And this is what makes Trustero special and unique. And we map it and graph it in a way that we're actually able to give you some very specific and unique and effective GRC analysis and agentic functionality out. That's what allows us to do continuous control monitoring. That's what allows us to do all of our agentic functionality. It allows us to do our gap analysis and all the things that we're going to show you today. So speaking of the things that we're going to show you today and the use cases of Trustero and what we really can do, we've really boiled this down into 9 categories of use cases. And those are up on the screen today. When we talk to Archer users and Archer experts, and an Archer team, we think the things that are the most useful for the type of organization, that the big, complicated organizations and the enterprises that tend to gravitate towards Archer, we think the things that they want and need the most are these 3 things that are highlighted. They talk to us about control assurance, the ability and the difficulty that comes with having that assurance around, are my controls operating effectively, and how challenging it is to continuously monitor those controls. Gap analysis, getting from one framework or a regulation to another is a massive operation when you're a big, complicated company. And just mapping, right? Saying which policy is mapped to which framework, to which regulation, et cetera, et cetera. And the bigger and more complicated you are, the harder these 3 things are. And that's where AI can be extremely powerful. Anything to add here, George or Paolo?
No, you summarized it pretty well. So those are tasks that are, by their nature, pretty involved. For example, control assurance, the self-assessment that we're performing, either before the audit or hopefully continuously, that is something that requires experts and requires their time. Same for the gap analysis. Look at your current state and change in the regulation, or you want to onboard a new framework, whether it's a regulatory framework, whether it's a control framework. It may take from several weeks to several months to just do the analysis and figure out what are the gaps. And then the mapping is really important because that's what we are after. If we think about when we talk about risk management, we want to make sure that we have the policies mapped to the risks and the controls mapped to the policies and the evidence mapped to the controls. And in a lot of the modern tools for GRC, all of those tasks are manual. We have the benefit of having a GRC system like Archer to catalog our artifacts, to organize our workflows, but still a lot of the work is manual. And that's where we step in here to kind of help assist with removing hopefully, but definitely reducing this manual burden of doing those things.
Said, okay. All right. I'm going to hand it off to you guys. This is what we're going to show today, George, with this. I'm going to hand it to you. I think we're going to show Trustero and Archer, just a little bit of the integration, just show that it's there. And then we're going to talk about two of these things today because we want to get this done relatively quickly. We know people have things to do, but we're going to show control assurance and gap analysis, and we're going to show 3 use cases within those. So with that, why don't you and Paolo take it away?
Yeah, thank you. And Paolo and I, we're going to tag team on this one. Paolo is going to do the magic within the tool and show you how these things work. So the self-assessment, that is a very common practice. As I mentioned, it happens either before the audit, or some companies actually distribute it throughout the year, like having parts of the audit happen during different times of the year. Or we all know the goal is to do a continuous control monitoring, which unfortunately in the traditional way requires a lot of resources. If you're in a more regulated environment like FedRAMP or the DoD, then you have to do it. And one of the the shortcuts that we usually do in those cases is, yeah, we have continuous control monitoring, but only for the FedRAMP environment. Whereas we know the value of continuous control monitoring. So something that Paolo is going to show you now is, first of all, briefly talk about how we do the integration with Archer, which is essentially we connect directly to Archer, which gives us access to all of these artifacts that you already have there. So all of your risks, policies, controls, evidence, whatever you already have in Archer, and the links between those artifacts, we can actually import into Trustero. Once we have it within Trustero, then we can start doing the magic with the AI. So Paolo, why don't you just start with that? Show us how easy the integration with Archer is.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So what you see in front of you is the integrations function with Archer. Essentially, we create Archer here as far as like, okay, what is the instance that is that we use against Archer? You type your username and your password, and then we hit activate. Simple as that. Once it activates, the system will start asking you what configuration do you want involved. So it will read through the different frameworks that you have in scope for Archer. In this case, we'll set SOC 2. And so it's going to fetch the import data. This will take a little bit. So in the interest of time, let me go through control assurance, and we'll come back to this in a moment. So as part of what Trustero AI can do for you is it has 3 AI-powered checks, and this essentially encompasses what our control assurance function can do. So the 3 AI-powered checks are control policy material difference. What this will do is the AI will review your control objective or control description against your policy and determine whether or not there is a gap. So for instance, if your policy states that I am performing my backup on a daily basis, and then your control says I am doing my backups on a weekly basis, the AI will highlight that as a gap. So instead of getting a green check here, you'll get a red X instead. The next check is evidence completeness. So this one is pretty straightforward. You have required evidence for each control or each requirement that you have, and then the AI will check for those. Have you attached or have you included all your evidence into those particular control? If the answer is yes, you get a green check. Last piece here is the operating effectiveness check. So this is unique and proprietary to Trustero because what it will do is the AI will execute the test procedures that you determine, essentially acting as a prompt for your AI and saying, hey, I need this control to be checked based on these parameters. And the AI will review the documents and any related evidence items to it, and then perform the assessment. So what does that look like? Let's go
Well,
into this
before you
example
move into
control.
the control, I just want to make a small comment here. First of all, these linkages between controls and policies is super important. And unfortunately, it is often misled. It's sometimes we link the control to a wrong policy, or the control doesn't really support the policy. And of course, we hate to find out during the audit. So we do it as part of the pre-check as a self-assessment. So instead of a human doing that, we have the AI doing that. The other thing I would like to mention is that in terms of evidence, we are connecting to Archer, and we can pull from the evidence that is already in Archer. However, the evidence can be supplied directly into our platform as well. So, for example, for automatic collection, we have those things called receptors that connect to your systems. They connect to your GitLab, to GitHub. It connects to Google Drive, connects to SharePoint, IAM systems that you have. So it pulls the evidence for the controls from there automatically, or you can supply it manually. Or the third option is continue doing what you're doing, pull those things into Archer. So long as they're in Archer, we're going to pull them from the integration point. So there are a lot of options of how to supply the evidence. And now Paul, you're going to explain exactly how we are testing the controls.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, you see here the anatomy of the control, where we have the control name and the description itself, the required evidence that I just talked to, test procedures, and then various linkages, including the linkage to the policy itself, who is responsible for this control, and then the different frameworks we have in scope. And so when we hover down here on the control page and I hit examine and test, you will see exactly the AI feedback that you would be expecting otherwise. And so everything you see here is AI generated. The best part here is if you have any gaps or any control issues, the AI will notate that for you. And to show you that we are not hallucinating, the AI is not hallucinating, it will tell you exactly what it looked at, and then it will give you recommendations for improvement for that particular control issue as well. So for example, in this operating effectiveness check that I talked to, we have 3 test procedures outlined above. So remember, we said, okay, I want you to check the cloud asset inventory. I want you to check my laptop inventory, as well as make sure that I have an architectural diagram for this asset management control. However, the AI says, okay, you passed the first 2, but you failed laptop inventory validation because you lacked crucial employee details, right? Like the location, as well as any pivotal information to determine that all laptops are secured. And so for this to not be repeated again in the future, the AI will suggest recommendations for improvement. So this is something that's very neat, because I myself, as a practitioner in the past, I would have to corroborate all the findings. I would have to go to multiple stakeholders and then write down my management action plan. That entire exercise would take me anywhere from maybe a day itself to multiple weeks, because of the multiple touch points in the workflow that I need to satisfy. Here, because to George's point, you have GRC data flowing into Trustero, it makes it easier for you as the practitioner, and you can literally just copy and paste the recommendations for improvement here into your management action plan and send that to your control owner.
Really quick, I just want to mention, you said that, one of the ways that we combat hallucination as an AI company is that we cite the sources. And I just want to mention,
Sure.
below Paolo's, his cursor there, you can see this control check was completed before citations were introduced. Paolo's talking about a feature that we introduced called cite sources. And so typically you would see this evaluation was run back in March on this demo account. So typically you would actually see the sources, the controls, the evidence, everything that this test looked at. So at the end of the webinar, Paolo, we should go back, if we have time, and look at a more current one, or we can send it with the recording. I just want to make sure people knew what you were talking about there. But this feature wasn't live when we ran this test, as we're realizing.
I'm glad that we're opening this topic about hallucination and inaccuracy, because it's super important, especially in the business that we are in the GRC. So often we have these questions from prospects or customers or people who are interested in the topic of, okay, why don't I just get, I don't know, Notebook LM and just load my documents there and start asking questions, and am I going to get the same thing? Not exactly. Several things. First of all, the details that you're getting from a purposefully built AI for GRC are at much higher level. You can try that. You can go to, I don't know, ChatGPT and start asking questions at a 10,000 feet view. Yeah, you're going to get the right answers. But once you start diving deeper, you just don't get the answers. The other thing is that because the general AIs do not have enough background, even if you rag it correctly, it doesn't have enough background, so the likelihood of hallucination is pretty high. What we do in our purposefully built AI is that we're ragging with the necessary documentation. We're using specific prompts and also some other tricks up our sleeve in order to reduce the hallucination. We're forcing the AI to describe exactly why it came up, to give us the reason why we came up with those conclusions. And as Michael said, also cite the documents. So overall, our hallucination, it's not zero, but it's pretty close to zero. So that's kind of one big difference between purposefully built AI for GRC and a generic AI that you can try to use in a similar fashion.
So why don't we take a pause here? Let's go back to what the Archer integration looks like. So you see here now, it was able to fetch the data from Archer, right? And it looked at all the policies you have embedded in Archer, all the controls that is relevant to your program in Archer, as well as all the evidence. So this is something that you can manipulate as well as saying, oh, I don't need this particular evidence. Maybe I don't need to import it. You can check and uncheck that. So that exacerbates the flexibility of our platform as well. So let me hit next here. It will give you a quick summary of what policies, controls, and evidence are that's being imported from Archer into Trustero. And then once I hit next, it's going to start finishing that up. So this will take about a minute again. But yep, you'll see here there's 9 policies, 8 controls, and 17 evidence pieces. So once I hit done, what the AI will do now is it will start indexing all the policies, controls, and evidence. And then we can start looking at that in the application, in this case, Trustero AI. So you see here, all the policies have been imported. And I'll go to evidence, or sorry, controls. And then last piece, evidence. See, it's been imported from Archer into Trustero.
So Paul, essentially you're ready to do a control assurance now, right? You're ready to do examining of the controls.
Exactly. And that's a great segue, George. So assuming we have all that context fed into Trustero AI from Archer, let's look at one other use case. So aside from control assurance, we have the questionnaire agentic AI feature here. And a lot of times when we do a gap assessment, as a practitioner, right, if I were working for my alma mater, let's say Deloitte in the past, I would charge you multiple 5 to 6 figure fees to perform a gap assessment. And it would take me anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months to give you the results. With Trustero AI, this will only take you anywhere between a few minutes to an hour. So as an example, I did here a mock DORA gap assessment, Digital Operational Resilience Act, and it had about 407 requirements. This took Trustero AI less than 2 hours to perform. And right then and there, you already have your results from the AI itself. So you will see here that, okay, if my policy talks about ICT risk management in accordance with DORA, it will tell you, it does not contain, it will tell you what the gap is. And again, alluding back to what Michael said earlier, it will cite sources. This proves to you, again, that the AI is not hallucinating. It actually looked at the context, the different policies, controls, and evidence that you have in Trustero, again, that we imported from Archer, and then provide you with the analysis thereafter. And this entire list here is something that you can export and perform further analysis on as a practitioner. And again, this took me less than 2 hours, whereas if we hire an outside practitioner, that would cost us a lot, and it would take a longer time as well to get the gap
Well,
assessment.
it took you less than 10 seconds. It took the AI less than 2 hours.
Yeah, it took me a few seconds per requirement. But the reason why it took me less than 2 hours was because I had 407
Sure.
requirements.
Yes,
Yeah.
you had to put the requirements in.
Yes, exactly.
Then you had to click the buttons.
Yep. Okay. The second example here is FFIEC. So this one has 142 requirements, and we actually did this for a large financial institution.
Hey, Paolo, really
Uh-huh.
quick, before we go to the next thing, let's answer this question. And so
Yes.
Jason is asking, does Trustero validate the design of the control? So does it include sufficient detail, who, what, where, when, why, and how? How do we validate control design this is for George and Paolo?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
So if you remember when Paolo was talking about the anatomy of the control, so we have on the left side what the control does, what is the evidence, and then on the right side we have the test of the control. So when we start doing the analysis, we first match the control to the policy. So the question here is whether the control is written in a way that matches the requirements from the policy. Okay, so that's what we check. So it's more of an effectiveness check rather than the efficiency check. For the efficiency, we have to rely on the natural intelligence. The AI is not there yet, although we're thinking about that. Then the other thing that it is checking is whether the test procedure really matches the control, the control procedure, right? If that doesn't work, then it's going to flag it during the operational effectiveness or during checking of the evidence. So I'm saying somewhat because we're checking for effectiveness. Now, efficiency, you have to figure out whether it's the most efficient way of doing this this check. So for that one, we want the person. So Paul, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to interject on that one. So the test procedure column here, you can leverage the operating effectiveness AI powered check here. So the test procedures, while it can be generated by AI itself, you can plug in your own. This is a customizable field. So anytime you have a standard, let's say, this is my control standard. This is what good looks like when I'm looking at a particular control. You can have the AI look into that, and then you can design your test procedures to validate the design of the control itself. So we have actually a really good use case for another large financial institution where we are saying, hey, we want to make sure that the design of the control is well and good. Here's a standard. Here's the test procedures to verify that and to test that, and then have the AI execute that itself. So it's flexible in that manner.
Paulo, you're bringing something very interesting. Probably you noticed during the whole presentation how we were picking different frameworks, and even here on the right, it's looking at different frameworks. Don't let that mislead you. We can actually work with anything. So long as you have a risk, policy, control, test for the control, and evidence for that control, then it could be anything. It could be your own framework. So currently, we're using those just for the demo purpose, and we have some curated content for them, but you can import anything.
So, Paolo, I think we should skip ahead to show Trustero Intelligence, because I was going to ask if this is a job that also is on the frontier of what Trustero Intelligence can do now and in the future. And I think the answer is like probably maybe or yes. So maybe it's a good time to show that. And then after that, maybe we can go back. If people can stick around, we can show the last piece that we were going to show.
Perfect. Yeah, and to segue from what Michael just mentioned, this is the new way of doing GRC. So in the past, we've always had to deal with spreadsheets, aggregate evidence together, maybe use a Confluence site on the side. But now you have AI, and we as Trustero, we enable you to have a conversation with your AI. And that's what you see here in Trustero Intelligence. On the left panel, you will have historical conversations that you've had with your AI. And then on the right panel, you can set context. Essentially, context means the policies, the controls, and the evidence that you would want the AI to derive its answers from. And so let me give you an example what it's like to have a conversation with the AI. Let's say I am a GRC manager in the company, and I want to know, when was my last disaster recovery test performed? So I hit enter. The AI will parse through the different contexts that you've provided it. Again, the different policies, controls, and evidence documents. And voila. It says here, the last disaster test recovery was performed on January 15, 2025, which makes it current. And as it's part of the annual data backup and restore test, according to the backup and restore test document that is embedded here. Again, site sources comes up. The AI says, I did not make it up. And this is something that you can validate yourself. You can open it and it will direct you to that page.
And by the way, Paulo, this is not just for GRC managers. I love exposing this to my auditors. So instead of them asking me the questions, they just have an intelligent conversation.
Yeah. So guys, remember when you've had to schedule anywhere between 20 to 40 hours collectively as a company just to do walkthroughs with your auditors? Well, guess what? You don't need to do that anymore. Once we expose Trustero Intelligence to them, they can ask their walkthrough questions directly to the AI, and the AI will provide them with that answer.
Let's show something a bit more challenging. Let's show the more sophisticated conversation that you had earlier, Paolo.
Absolutely. So one of the more sophisticated conversations I've had with the AI is I wanted to have the AI perform an analysis on my user access review program. And so to pressure test it, I said, hey, AI, when was the last user access review performed? It was performed last February, and here's the evidence. And then you'll notice this box here. I changed the context. And what that means is I originally had everything included, but once I hit edit context and then I hit exclude all, I just wanted it to focus on one particular control, which is IM05 for user access review. So you can set context however way you want it so that the AI will give you more focused answers as opposed to a more broad-based brushstroke. So I hit continue, and then that's exactly what the AI looked at here. And it said that context has been set. So what the question now is, what systems were looked at as part of the user access review? I wanted to make sure that this is a complete and accurate user access review. And for the intent and purposes of this demo account, yes, it is, because it looked at AWS, it looked at GitHub, it looked at Google Workspace. And so as a sample, AI lists all the users and their roles as well. And so it gave you a detailed list of what that is and their roles, whether it's an admin or a non-admin role. The next conversation I have now is going to be relevant towards closing the loop on the user access review process, which is, were there any corrective actions or required actions resulting from the user access reviews? And the answer is, even though the user access reviews several findings, generally it concluded with no action required. However, outside of the user access reviews, there might be a specific note items that needed to be acted upon. So including enabling MFA. So this is good because this gives you the power of the AI where it's thinking a little bit outside the box too. It's not only testing whether or not you perform your user access review, but it's also telling you in the course of performing this exercise, make sure you also enable your MFA. And so what I did now, again, I changed context. I hit, hey, include all contexts. Last part, create recommendations or action plans to make sure that any corrective actions as part of this process is done. And so best part here is, again, it lists you step-by-step actions. This is something I can copy and paste to my management action plan so that I can work and coordinate with my control owners or my stakeholders to seal the loop here to make sure that all corrective actions are addressed. But furthermore, if there's any process improvement opportunities, these are also performed.
Why don't we show the last use case that you were going to show, the second use case you were going to show?
All right, sounds good. So this next use case is we had a large financial institution come to us and say, hey, look at the FFIEC IT handbook and perform a policy design assessment against it. So in this case, we are asking the AI specifically, does the accounts policy meet this particular requirement within the FFIEC IT handbook? So this whole process took about 26 minutes, as you can see here. And that's because we had 142 different requirements for the FFIEC IT handbook. And so similarly, the AI once again looked at the different policies that's within your account and then compared it against the requirements in the handbook and provide you with an AI generated output here. Very useful from a gap assessment. Again, this is not only a time saver because it took 26 minutes as opposed to multiple weeks, but also cost efficient for your organizations because instead of spending multiple thousands of dollars, it's all included here in Trustero AI. So I'll loop it back here to Michael.
Okay, excellent, Paolo. I think we're going to go ahead and let's wrap it up since we are a little over time here. I'll take over the screen. Okay, so I just wanted to take a quick moment to mention that, you can see my screen, right, Paolo?
Yes.
Yeah, if you are, a couple of months ago, we released a white paper called AI for GRC. Really simple title, very, very simple, but thorough concept. And we thought we were trying to think about everything that AI should be and already is and will be doing in the GRC space. George and our CEO and Paolo and our VP of product had a ton to do with this, and our engineers have a lot to do with this white paper. And we got a lot of outside help as well. And so it's a great read. It's very interesting. And I think for any practitioners who are thinking about what is AI going to do to my job and how is my job going to change? And then how can I stay on this wave? And then what should I be thinking about as I implement AI solutions in my organization? I think this is a great read. And this is what this is all about. So that's available on our website. You can also just go to trustero.com, AI for GRC. If you, clicked the wrong thing there. If you liked what you saw today, we would love to not spend any money on Google advertising and instead just give you a gift for coming and seeing us directly. So if you like what you saw today, make sure to schedule your demo for Trustero using that QR code on the left there, and we will send you a cool gift. We like to send these funny coffee mugs that stay warm for an obscene amount of time, or a nice pair of over-ear headphones just for spending 45 minutes with us and letting Paolo show you in great detail what Trustero can do for you, specifically like for your use cases and the problems that you're trying to solve with your organization. So again, if you want to talk to us, we're nice people. And if you want to talk to Trustero, make sure you use that website to schedule that demo so we can give you something nice for it. And that website will be up for a few days. We leave it up after every webinar for a few days. So it'll be up for the people who watch the recording as well. That said, thanks for joining us and hope to see you on this one. Paolo, George, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paolo.